So, it seems that workplace learning is going through an evolution and revolution at the same time. And it's time we had a chat about the strategic choices that we face. Back in 2023, when ChatGPT first came out, it was a shock to the system, especially to L&D, which has historically, rightly or wrongly, been defined or defined itself primarily through content development, which is, of course, generative AI's natural home. However, at the same time, AI has introduced a lot of opportunity for us to improve our practice. Things like using AI for learning design and content, creating course outlines, learning activities, all kinds of multimodal content that for the longest time has been cost prohibitive to do at scale. Personalization, probably the classical use case of AI in L&D and for all sorts of learning. We've had adaptive learning since before generative AI was a thing. Content curation. Then, of course, we have AI that helps us develop skills practice opportunities. Because right now, we've long known that content does not equal skills, and it does not lead to skills without practice. And what AI is giving us is the ability to replace some of the content that we're putting in front of people with an actual sandbox of practice where they can use their natural language, speak with AI, get feedback, reflection, all of these loops firing up and being closed down. Then, of course, AI for data analysis. We are, some of us are using AI, and definitely there are possibilities to use AI in both qualitative and quantitative data analysis. We have AI for performance support, this holy grail of supporting people in the flow of work. If someone has a question, if they are blocked somehow in their work, for the longest time we've had these conversations about how do we help people just get the information that they need and to move on with their work. AI can help with that through various task-specific assistance, through co-pilots, knowledge management. And of course, there's this whole family of AI uses that I call skills management, from taxonomies, inferences, to forecasting, then creating career pathways, internal mobility, and so on. So if we had a look into how L&D is actually using AI in these ways, we would end up with something of a scale that I like to call the complexity scale. On this scale, we have these key pillars, key verticals of AI used, arranged from simple, which I define as the AI uses where L&D can use AI autonomously, all the way over here to sophisticated, where L&D needs extra skills, technology, or relationships to make these use cases happen. And for the last 2 years, 23, 24, L&D has been using AI a bit like this. So we have a lot of use of AI for administrative tasks, and this is all based on my and Donald Taylor's research over the last several years. AI for administrative tasks, where we're obviously using AI for document writing, email writing, meeting notes, internal communications, these kinds of things. I mean, you use AI in those ways. You know what I mean. Learning design and content. So using AI to create, again, high-level outlines, learning assets, designs, and so on. And then we had a steep drop-off. What was going on here? And my answer to that is that these AI use cases are relatively effortless. Because a lonely learning designer with no budget can take their free ChatGPT account, and if they like to tinker, and usually they do like to tinker, they can create something actually valuable. They can go quite far with it. But then every step to the right, you need additional skills, technologies, or relationships. So for personalization, adaptive or curated learning, you need, well, usually a platform that can do that, which means budget, which means effort. Skills practice. Again, it's either you have the resource to create this internally, it's possible, or you buy a vendor solution, but then there's another layer of complexity, which is rollout, because here, the end user is interacting directly with AI, which means that you need to have phased rollout, run pilots, see how it's performing so that no one embarrasses themselves, that it works as expected, you create these feedback loops. So there's much more hassle with rollout here. It's not as easy as, here we create a course and we ship it. Then with data analysis, well, we need two things here. We need both the data skills, and let's be honest, we are not data nerds here in L&D, and we need the relationships elsewhere in the business to actually get that data from them so that we can work with that data. Performance support and skills management, they are one of these things where there's something that we really would like to have. However, in these cases, in many organizations, L&D is a key stakeholder, but is not a decision maker in making a decision, for example, to start using an enterprise search assistant or to start moving in the direction of a skills-based organization. So this was up to last year. But then this year, we ran the survey again. And this is what the use looks like this year. We have more personalization happening, still a lot of admin tasks, still a lot of learning design, but a lot more personalization. And that personalization is happening in a different way. The definition has expanded. Now personalization can be done at the point of content creation by the instructional designer, because what they do now is that they take the content that they have and they use AI to rewrite that entire content for different personas that they have also found out with the help of AI. Then we have skills practice. Again, last year, there were pilots here and there. This year, it's actually a very popular use case across the industry. These bots are popping up all over the place. Data analysis, well, most of it is still qualitative analysis, meaning mostly analyzing feedback surveys, but it still is better than nothing. It's something that we didn't used to do almost at all in the industry. And now what that means is that people are not analyzing 20 feedback surveys at a time. They're analyzing hundreds or thousands over years to understand the insights, to understand what's coming up, to understand what the skill gaps are, to understand where the people are dropping off, what is relevant and not relevant. So that small change actually makes quite a difference for L&D. And here we have tumbleweed, as always, but that's a different situation. So this spread, this is evolution. This is our evolution over the past 3 years. So things are evolving. Change is happening. But it's also important to remember that we do not exist in a silo. Earlier this year, I was having a catch-up with our industry colleague, Lars Hyland. And he said something that has really stuck with me. He said, isn't it interesting that when we start talking about AI and learning, we end up talking about the world? And, well, he was right, because this is exactly what happened in our conversation. And the reason for it is that if we want to understand the impact that AI is going to have and is having on learning and L&D, we need to understand the wider context. We need to understand how it's affecting the business, how it's affecting the world of work. I like to call it having a point of view on the future of work. Because having that kind of point of view enables us to imagine what the future looks like and start building towards it, instead of being distracted by the newest AI release. So let's have a look at some of these forces that are affecting us, building on Brenda's presentation earlier. Pace of change. How many of you have heard the term vibe coding? That's 30%. Vibe coding is the ability to use AI to create code to write code for apps just using natural language, just instructing and speaking what the AI should be doing without any software engineering skills. How many of you have heard of the term or of the concept of a single founder unicorn? Yeah, probably, yeah, like 20-30%. It's the idea that you don't need, or you soon won't need, hundreds or thousands of people to run a company. That AI can do so many tasks that are very time-consuming that someone in their living room or a very small group of people can create a $100 million or even $1 billion business that can compete head-to-head with the traditional big businesses. How many of you have heard of service as software? Not software as a service, but service as software. The other way around. Almost no one. I know you wanted to say that you've heard of SaaS. Everyone has heard of SaaS. Service as software is this direction that AI might be moving. Again, a lot of it is hype. A lot of it may be able to be real a few months from now. So service as software is about AI taking over some of the tasks that would previously require a lot of human time and effort. Things like, for example, call center operations, customer support, where AI can do some of these tasks, like in, for example, IKEA's example, and it can scale these operations really fast. So why am I talking to you about this? I'm telling you this because these examples illustrate the kind of speed that we're going to have to deal with. Because they illustrate the kind of competitive environment that is going to get that much fiercer. If someone in their living room can create a business that can compete with traditional big businesses, these big businesses that most people are part of and work for, they're going to have to move that much faster to be able to respond. And for them to be able to do that, it is their employees who are going to have to execute on those strategies and execute on that agility. And this is why it matters to us in L&D, because that is done through upskilling, through reskilling, and doing it at scale. Speaking of speed, have you heard of the term or the concept zero latency economy? Yeah, almost no one. Right now, when you close your laptop, aside from a few emails, when you get up in the morning and you open your laptop again for a new day, you pick up where you left off the day before. If the promise of AI is realized with agents that can do quite sophisticated tasks, it means that when you finish your workday, AI can take your output and continue doing things with it, so that by the time you open your laptop again the next morning, the work has moved. It's like coming back from vacation over and over again. So my question to you, a rhetorical question, what do you think that is going to do to the expectations on human performance that businesses are going to be expecting from people? Now another force, well, a consideration. What about the performance equation? You have probably seen this by now seminal case study of HBS and BCG and Wharton, where they looked at how BCG consultants are using AI, and what they noticed is that AI has uplifted the performance of lower performing consultants more than it uplifted the performance of better performing consultants, effectively lifting the floor of performance. Another case study came out, a similar group of researchers, HBS and P&G, looking at how how people can work with AI for product development. So obviously, we have long known that a team with no AI outperforms an individual working alone on the same problem. What was interesting is how much AI uplifted individual performance. An individual working with AI produced better quality outputs than a team working without AI. And this is how most teams right now are set up. It's still working without AI as being part of the team. And actually, the solution ended up being a more balanced solution because people managed to break out of their silos. Because previously, if you were a subject matter expert in, say, engineering, and there were subject matter experts in commercial, they would come up with solutions that would really take into account their subject matter, but not the other part of it. So these teams, or these individuals and teams working with AI, they actually came up with more balanced solutions, and they reported better emotional satisfaction scores about the process itself of working with AI. So something to think about. Because when we think about this performance equation, it changes. For the longest time, we've had this one lever, skills, up and down. Well, hopefully up. But now, with AI, when we're talking about people working with AI, we have several variables. Well, at least two. But probably there are some variables come out at the intersection of these two. But essentially, it is about configuring how to best make sure that humans working with AI, that they maximize each of their performance. And then the forces, the dual forces of integration and decentralization. You know by now that AI is at its best when it has a lot of good quality data. And that means that enterprise systems have this pressure to integrate, to be able to interact with each other, to get access to each other's data, and string together various solutions and AI workflows. So what that means, for example, for L&D, is that what we right now call, say, learning technology, it might soon become HR technology. It goes under, say, the HR tech stack, and that might come under enterprise intelligence technology. So the main consideration here is what are the implications on what L&D actually owns once this process picks up? And then, of course, we have decentralization, which is, well, you've probably noticed it yourself, that AI gives people the ability to create their own content, find what they need, mixed results, but people still do it. When they have a question, they ask ChatGPT for an answer. People who are more skilled with AI, they can even create their own AI tutor or helper or thought partner or sparring partner or whatnot. So that raises this broader question about, with that in mind, what is the role of L&D? Because when I look at all of these factors together, I cannot help but feel that the evolution of L&D isn't keeping up with the revolution in the world of work. Because if you remember the drop-off, it seems that what's happening is that we have been using AI to tweak an old model. The model of content-focused L&D. When I would argue what we actually need to do is to think about what is the role and purpose of the L&D of the future that can keep adding value in this new world of work. Because the center, it cannot hold. With generative AI, the value of content has plummeted, and so will the value of L&D if it ties itself to content. So what do? My research co-author, Donald Taylor, and I, we have been pondering this question for the last half a year. And we've identified 3 possible directions for L&D. The first option is for L&D to reassert itself and become what we call a skills authority. Let me give you an example. There's a company in the US, and they work in business process outsourcing, and specifically customer support, think call centers. What does that mean in practice? Well, try as you might, this is the kind of industry where employee turnover is quite high. And that means that every year, they have to onboard thousands of new employees. It's not even it. Because they onboard these employees to work in their clients' call centers, they don't onboard them as one big group. They onboard them for each client, which means that groups of employees within those thousands, they need to be onboarded on their client company's products and services and systems that they use and call flows. Sometimes they need to get certifications in more technical fields to be able to advise their customers. So you're essentially running several onboardings at the same time. And if you think this is not extreme enough, they are also contractually obliged to meet certain performance KPIs within a set period of time. So things like satisfaction scores or first call resolution, things like that. And if they do not meet these KPIs within a certain amount of time, they get fined. And if they do meet them, they get a bonus. So as you can see, in this company, we see a situation where skills and people having real skills is uniquely crucial to the overall company's business model. And their L&D has stepped up big time. It is run by a learning scientist who has upskilled his entire team, including technologists, on the fundamentals of learning, on how learning works, the main processes, what good learning looks like, what processes need to be activated in your brain for learning to happen. So that even people who are responsible for bringing in vendor products, they can look at them, they can go out into the market, they can look at them and they can assess whether they are any good. Or if they need to customize what they already have that expertise. So everyone shares deep expertise in learning. And what they have created together is something that I could probably describe as a skill development ecosystem. Because what they've managed to do is that once they get a brief from a client, which says that we need to achieve these kinds of KPIs, this is what needs to be done, give us the people. They take that brief and they are using AI and their proprietary frameworks and know-how, and they set it up in a certain way so that that brief with KPIs gets translated into the behaviors and skills that need to be acquired. They have analyzed it to a point where they can say that if you want an uplift on this figure, then you need to be trained on this and this and that, these are the behaviors that we need to target. Then, once they get those skills and behaviors, they have another AI solution which looks at that and then creates a high-level curriculum, again, true to form, evidence-based, about what is the most effective, most evidence-based way of developing those skills. And then they create most of learning assets as well. Anything from scripts to workshop facilitation notes to courses to whatnot, visuals and so on. But this is all about the internal L&D, what's happening with learning designers. They know very well that the main job that their employees need to do is they need to go out there and have conversations with customers on very complex topics, solving customers' problems. And to give people that confidence, they've created a whole sandbox of both systems and conversational practice based on the concept of deliberate practice, where you take a micro skill and you hone that micro skill and then another micro skill and so on, and you stitch them together, and then you develop mastery fluency until you're able to go out there in a field. They have some other tools that help managers notice when people need support and intervene at the right time. But essentially, if I had to describe what they do at a very high level, they're essentially doing two things. They are treating skills as a business-critical resource. That's first. What does that mean in practice? Because everyone can see that, of course, skills are important. No, what it means to be a business-critical resource, it means that you know what that resource is. You know what it looks like. You can define the skill. You know where to find them. You know what good looks like. You have the ability to track how they are developing. And you have the expertise to grow them. And this expertise to grow a business-critical resource is exactly what gives that particular L&D team the weight in the company and the strategic influence that they have that enables them to do this work. And of course, the grow part, that only works because they have the deep learning expertise. So skills authority is about L&D fully leaning into being a custodian of learning and really professionalizing in this field to be able to deliver results. So that's skills authority. However, that is not your only option. You can do something very different and go in the direction of what we call an enablement partner. Let me give you another example. This one is a consulting company. They are around 3,000 employees, 16 countries, and they have been developing a framework for AI since before AI was cool. So for the last 10 years, they have been developing an internal secure, because of course, consulting client information, so they were very clear that they wanted to create their own internal AI ecosystem. And they've been developing that framework, and one of the things that they really wanted to do is that they wanted to create a user-friendly way for employees to create whatever AIs, chatbots, tools, whatever they need. So essentially, what they've created is a user-friendly interface without any technical skills. You go into the platform, and you're able to see that, okay, you might upload your own data, you might connect the existing data in the company because they've made sure that data is reliable. Then you can prompt in the background and pretty much create whatever you need with AI. And the most peculiar thing happened when this thing actually got released to the wider employee population. People started creating their own performance support tools. If I'm a consultant who needs this final check of my work, of my report, before I send it over to my client, I create an AI for that. That has the full context, know what good looks like with examples and everything. I know how to set it up so it's reliable. And I have the technology. If I am a team leader who has to deal with some HR issues, HR considerations in my team, and I'm not really an HR expert, I create an AI that can help me do that, and I can share it then with my peers across the company. So these solutions started springing up in the company, and what they realized, the key insight that their L&D had, was that if you give people the technology and the skills, their ideas and the performance support that they create for themselves are going to be better than anything that L&D can come up with. Because they know their jobs best. And if you accept that premise, then the inevitable next question is, okay, so then what does L&D do if people can create their own tools? They decided to create value in a different way. That's actually worked out quite well for them. Because they know that innovation can only thrive in an environment where everyone can contribute, where everyone, where it's not top-down, where it's grassroots innovation from the bottom up. So the first thing that they're responsible for is making sure that the environment is there, that people have the skills, they have the knowledge, they know how to use the tools, so that they are able to create these innovations. Once they do that, Then the next step is, of course, finding these pockets of innovation in the company, because you never know where they appear. It might be some two people in the corner of the world that no one knows about, and they're shaving off 10 minutes of a task that takes another 1,000 consultants in the company that they do. It takes them usually half an hour, and they do every day. And this is a massive, massive potential benefit and performance uplift if you can scale and globalize it across the company. So they have created processes where they are very close to the employees. They are constantly keeping a pulse on what's going on, and they have created their own systems where they can more easily find these people, find where these innovations are happening, and then the last thing that they do is that they help scale them, from getting buy-in to going through the entire chain to helping with the rollout of these solutions, scaled global rollout. So this is what they ended up doing. Obviously, there are different iterations of that. You might have an enablement partner, L&D, that, for example, uses something much simpler. If you have an LMS that enables people to create their own content, and so that there's no like one author, that they can create their own resources and share with their employees. This is another example of how, if you create the right processes around that, you can enable and you can empower employees to do what they know best. You can support them, of course, to make sure that the quality is there, that there is coordination happening, but that enables L&D to go one step up the strategy ladder and work on more strategic global initiatives alongside other functions in the company. So what it takes to be an enablement partner, there are at least 3 enablers. The first one is having the right infrastructure. So having the tools and systems that enable people to capture and share their knowledge. The second enabler is processes, which is about how do you ensure that that knowledge can be scaled, and how do you ensure that people don't end up working in silos and that chaos ensues across the entire company when everyone's doing whatever they want. And finally, culture. There needs to be a culture of trust in the organization, a culture of empowerment of employees, and of course, of this already established trust between the business and L&D. So that's an enablement partner. But there's also a third option that I call the adaptation engine. And this is probably the most radical of the 3, because in this iteration, L&D stops existing as a standalone function, and it becomes a skill in a multidisciplinary team that works on challenges end to end. I feel like an example would really help here. So there's a startup, actually a scale-up, several thousand people. And as any scale-up, they have something in common, all of them. First is that the learning curve is super steep. You can start, you can be an early career specialist, and suddenly a few months later you have to become a people manager. Like that, this is the kind of career trajectories and the speed of learning that you have to deal with. And then the other thing is, of course, that they are very technology and AI positive, because they are often, a lot of scale-ups are using AI in their own products or services. And they're also very keen to shave off as many inefficiencies as possible, and therefore they're strategically very inclined to get people using AI. But what happens when people actually adopted AI in this organization? What they noticed, what L&D noticed, is that people started creating training for themselves. So sales would create a course for account managers. An engineering manager would create a leadership development program for their peers. And L&D wouldn't get involved in that. They wouldn't be invited in those, into that process. So if you've heard this litmus test question that sometimes is asked, which is, what would happen to your organization if L&D disappeared? Well, this team actually faced that question in real life, and here's how they dealt with it. Because they completely reimagined the value add of the team. The first thing that they did is that they completely changed the skills composition in the company. So they were no longer learning specialists. In fact, they now have a behavioral scientist and researcher, service and product designers, technologists, generalist talent manager. There is no one whose sole expertise is learning. They have brought in different people. The team looks very differently. That also means that they had to change the way they work. So nowadays, they reset their OKRs every 6 months. And they also then identify what are the most pressing, highest value people issues that they can help solve. What are the highest leverage issues? And then they create these solutions end to end. So for example, if you have an attrition problem, you look at it holistically, from the entire employee value proposition to the benefit system, to career pathways. And if there is some learning to be done, it is not done by a learning person in the team. It is done by the entire team collectively. And of course, this is an example of this adaptation engine that is focused on people. It can easily be led by something like IT or operations. You've already heard that there are mergers, I think, was it in Moderna? And I think there are going to be others where HR goes under IT or merges with some sort of digital, new digital unit. And that definitely raises questions like what would performance mean and how it would be managed in these kinds of teams where what we see as people skills are under a technology leadership. So it might well be that we might have a team, again, in that case it would be a very different skill composition. But for example, if it is an IT-led adaptation engine, it might be that it is a team that works on how do you set up systems so that people can, so that you can maximize the system and the human performance, and someone would have to take care or be able to identify the considerations for the human part. But again, we are not talking about a learning person who creates a course on how to use a system. This is a very different way of working through these issues. And this is why this is called an adaptation engine, because it is not about a static learning function. It is about a dynamic system that enables the business to constantly adapt to the change happening in the market by looking at everything from people to processes to tech. And the key enablers are, of course, as you can see, it's quite difficult to compare it to the other two futures. But if this is something that you're considering, you should be willing to completely redesign the skills and roles and ways of working in your team. So here we are. We have skills authority, we have enablement partner, and we have the adaptation engine. And this is what we call the transformation triangle. Because the reality is that there is no escalator taking us to the future of L&D, to some set future that we know is inevitably coming. We are seeing that an evolution in L&D is not keeping up with the revolution in the world of work, and we don't quite know how these two are going to coalesce and what's going to come out of it all. So the decisions you make today will determine how AI is going to affect your team, your organization, our industry as a whole, and us as professionals individually. The teams that have already peeked behind the curtain, they're showing us that there are at least 3 directions of where we go from here. Skills authority, enablement partner, and adaptation engine. The choice is yours. Thank you.